In the middle of the night, the girl woke up. She did not understand what was happening and did not remember how she ended up here. Suddenly she felt that she was very uncomfortable and hard. The next moment, she lowered her eyes and saw that she was sitting astride a half-naked guy. It was Archduke Glenn. The girl was in a panic, did not understand what was happening here, and how she ended up in this position. She looked at the guy and could not believe that this was happening now. He lay half-naked and silently looked at her. But the strangest thing was that his hands were tied. It was kind of crazy. A girl named Vivian at that moment did not understand if this was a dream or if she had just lost her mind. My God, what have I done? Suddenly she realized that most likely she had kidnapped the Archduke. She was only 14 years old when her attention was first attracted by that Archduke. It happened at the debutante ball. This place was filled with the hopes and dreams of young and noble people. Very young Vivian modestly stood at the ball and dreamed that she would be able to meet a young, handsome man, and then start a romantic relationship with him. All the girls around with bated breath discussed the appearance of the young Archduke. They could not hide their admiration for his beauty, and they were all in love with him as one. Lennox Elpidian Glenn. At that time he was 18 years old. At the age of 17, he inherited the title, and the attitude of those around him changed a lot accordingly. He shone like a diamond. It was then that she fell in love with him at first sight. The young girl's heart fluttered just by looking at him. This is how 7 years of her fanaticism began. Thanks to her talent for drawing, she did not stop painting every moment with the Duke. Only in this way could she secretly admire him, so that no one would know and guess nothing, in addition to her family members and loved ones. The girl understood that it was not normal and looked like madness, but she could not help herself. Her whole room was hung with her portraits. He was everywhere, and it was her little paradise for her. She dreamed of living like this in this invented world, never getting married forever, although her parents did not stop talking to her constantly about the search for a future husband. Are you talking about it again? God, how long are you going to admire the Archduke? Suddenly the girl asked, noticing the sad Vivian in an embrace with a portrait of a guy. It was Marina. Vivian was very glad to see her and rushed to her with hugs. She explained to her that dreaming about this guy makes her happy. Marina always made fun of her and warned that in this way she would take place alone. Then she said that she needed to go somewhere and asked me to take care of her bag with things. They are dangerous, so don't open the bag. Marina warned the girl and quickly ran away, promising to return very soon. Marina owns magic. She studies at the academy in the capital of the empire. Because her hometown is too far away from her studies, she stayed with Vivian's family. Therefore, Marina always felt indebted to them. The girl was left alone and once again began to look at the album with her drawings of the guy. But this bag did not give her peace of mind. Vivian wanted to look into the bag even more after Marina told her not to. Nothing will happen if I take a glimpse. I'll just take a look and close it right away, she thought without taking her eyes off the bag. In the end, curiosity won out. The girl decided that she would take a quick look and put everything in its place. All of a sudden, all her drawings from the album were scattered all over the room, making a terrible mess. A moment later, the girl saw a huge black glass ball that most likely rolled out of her bag while she was trying to collect her drawings. She took it in her hands and immediately decided that she needed to put the ball back into her bag as soon as possible. But before she even took a few steps, she stumbled. The ball could not be held in her hands and fell to the floor, breaking into many small pieces. Vivian was very upset and did not know what to do now. She did not understand how to explain all this to Marina now. In the next moment, the girl felt that something strange was happening around her. And then there was complete darkness. She did not even have time to call someone for help. It was the last thing Vivian remembered. She sat on the bed and tried to remember something else, but I get nothing from her. The only thing she was sure of was that this strange black ball was to blame for everything. But she did not remove the blame from herself either. I'm such a fool. If only I hadn't opened Marina's bag, the girl thought. With horror, I understand that nothing can fix it. Why don't you finish what you started? Suddenly she heard a question. The guy lay down and smiled sweetly. Then he added that he would very much like to continue what she began to do with him. The girl was shocked by his words. It even seemed to her that he was not aware that he had just been kidnapped. At the same time, she couldn't understand how someone like her could kidnap Archduke Swordmaster. Also, she tied him up. Lady Vivian, why are you so upset? Also, the guy addressed her kindly. The girl didn't even know what to say. She never thought that at the age of 21 she would kidnap a guy and find herself in such a situation. She was sure that sooner or later the imperial family officers would break into her room. And when they see her room, they will definitely say it. There are drawings of the Archduke everywhere. I even get goosebumps. Then she noticed that she was still bound. The girl rushed to the Archduke with apologies and quickly began to untie the ropes. She couldn't believe she had bound him so tightly. At that moment, she felt terrible. Because of these ropes, she damaged the beautiful body of the guy. It's okay, Vivian. Her boyfriend reassured her after she'd untied him. And then he even added that he really liked being tied up. His words confused her even more. She did not understand why he is still so affectionate with her. Moreover, they had never even talked before. The girl even began to suspect that he had simply gone crazy because of the kidnapping. It was very bad. She began to panic, not knowing what to do now. Your Mightiness, how many fingers am I showing? She asked, showing him one finger. But to her surprise, the guy answered correctly. He also correctly gave his full name and answered all her questions absolutely normally. From all his answers, it looked like he was still sane. Well, then it remained unclear why he was so gentle with her. It was her imagination, or he really enjoyed the situation. Vivian, I heard that you wanted to be intimate with me. Suddenly the guy said and persistently began to pester her. The girl did not know how to react and was in absolute disarray. But when the Archduke kissed her hand, she almost went crazy. All her thoughts were spinning in her head without rest. She couldn't understand what was happening here and what it all meant. In addition, at that moment, she realized with horror that now he was right in her room, which was all hung with his portraits. At any moment, the whole truth that she had been hiding for so long could be revealed. The thought that the guy would know about her fanaticism from him for the whole 7 years made her dizzy. A minute later, sitting in front of the half-naked Archduke, who gently held her hand, the girl realized that she urgently needed to cool down and think carefully. The main thing was to understand why he behaved the way he did. After all, it was only her bedroom, not the tiger's lair. There was only one problem. The fact that the Archduke she captured is here. She was still haunted by the thought of what she was going to do with him. No matter how you look at it, it was some kind of shamelessness. Vivian really wanted to explain that she didn't do all this on purpose. She just liked to watch him from the side. It was enough for her that he would remember her as a sweet girl who once greeted him. But in the end, she became an unscrupulous kidnapper. She wasn't even sure if she should try to find some kind of excuse. It seemed pointless, but it's still better than just sitting silently. Archduke, your kidnapping happened unplanned. It was a mistake. She turned to the guy with a confused look. She told him how a strange black bead had recently fallen out of her hands and broken. Then the girl thought, due to her obsession with the Archduke, she never entered into relationships with other men. Somewhere before the age of 16, hope for mutual feelings still smoldered in her chest. Well, as she got older, the girl realized the harsh reality of what was happening. A girl from a poor family should never be near the Archduke. But maybe somewhere deep inside I wanted to kidnap him. Did the black bead only expose my desires? The girl asked herself these questions. She imagined with horror the shock of her parents and her brother Cassian when they found out about this. I got it, Vivian. After a short pause, the guy suddenly answered, and then he briefly recounted her whole story about the black ball and how she does not remember how it all happened. The girl was delighted. She could not believe that he really believed her every word and understood everything. In addition, even though the room was dark, she was simply blinded by his insane beauty, and it was very difficult for her to concentrate, to explain all this. Do you think I'll believe it? She kidnapped me and invented such nonsense. Unexpectedly, after all this, smiling, the guy said to her. Vivian was again in a panic, because everything she said was the pure truth. The Archduke always had crowds of admirers. If they find out that she stole it, then she will not only be branded in society, but also put in jail. Vivian knew that this could not be allowed. Marrying him was no longer her goal. She just wanted to live as a fan of his. A normal happy life like everyone else. That was enough for her. The girl remembered that it all started with a few paintings, and then there was no stopping her, and his portraits filled the room. At that moment, she really wanted to go back in time and not touch Marina's bag. The girl could no longer contain her emotions. Tears began to trickle down her cheeks one by one. The guy noticed her frustration. He gently wiped away her tears and hugged her tightly. The girl again, with tears in her eyes, tried to explain to him that all this did not happen on purpose, and she did not want it. But he only smiled and answered, "But you still kidnapped me." His reaction even pissed her off a little. She began to think that he liked the whole situation, and all his jokes on her gradually began to piss her off. But the next moment, she looked at him and immediately forgot about everything. His sinful beauty covered all character flaws. "Vivian, so what shall we do? My nights will be here, and you will have to go to jail." Suddenly, also with a sweet expression on his face and his smile, he turned to the girl. She was amazed. At that moment, she wanted to tear her hair out of her head from hopelessness. But the guy stopped her and began to calm her down. "I think there is a way out of this difficult situation. You can be my mistress." The girl was speechless. She certainly didn't expect to hear from him. Thoughts raced through her head at the speed of light. Don't they usually offer this after meeting a little? She thought at that moment. She felt uncomfortable with such a proposal. Archduke Grand Nobleman of the Empire. He is a powerful man who controls half of the entire territory of the country. A person who possesses wealth and power, comparable to that of an emperor. Well, he certainly can't marry the daughter of a little-known count. In addition, there were rumors that he was going to enter into a political marriage with the princess of another state. Accordingly, Deprived could become his legal wife. Vivian understood this very well. From all of it, it followed that they would be a couple for a little while, and then they would separate, or not. The girl could not figure out what his proposal meant. "Do you agree, Vivian?" The guy hurried her with the answer, seeing her indecision. The girl understood that he knew perfectly well that she had no other choice. How else could she explain this whole kidnapping situation? She even had a hope that later Marina would be able to prove her innocence when she told about the black ball. But it was incredible. Marina was from a not very influential family. There was a high probability that her testimony would not be considered, so there was only one way out. "I'll be your mistress." Gaining courage, the girl replied, but she had one condition. She wanted to make a love contract. Vivian was very proud of herself for coming up with such a brilliant idea. She decided that if they signed a contract, they could determine how long this relationship would last, how it would end, and how far it could go. The girl did not think that the Archduke would want something more than kisses, but who knows? Moreover, he was so handsome that she could not vouch for herself. The girl noticed that the guy did not really like the idea of a love contract. "Does this mean that Vivian is not going to seriously date me?" Disappointed, he asked. The girl was very surprised by his reaction to her proposal. It was the first time she had spoken to him for such a long time in her life. What kind of close relationships are we talking about? It all seemed too sudden to her to talk about something serious. "But you kidnapped me." The guy objected to her words, and then he asked for what period she wants to conclude this contract. Vivian didn't expect such a question. She did not even think about how long such contracts usually last. The girl suggested 6 months. The guy was silent in response, so she decided it was too much and suggested 4. He didn't answer her again, only became much more serious. "Sorry. Fine. How about 2? The girl suggested, worried that even this period was too long for him and he would refuse. She didn't know how much to say. In addition, she began to suspect that he did not like the very idea of a contract. But it was very strange, after he invited her to become his mistress. 1 year. After a minute of silence, the guy answered the surprised girl and gently took her hand. Vivian was very surprised. This time seemed too long to her, but the guy, without letting go of her hand and seeing her embarrassment, said that it seemed to him that even this period would not be enough. But in the end, the girl thought and agreed to 1 year. "Then let's swear, Vivian." Even though she didn't think it was that important, she still complied with his request. They stood against each other and sullenly made a vow that they would observe contractual love. The girl spoke the words of the oath and was a little embarrassed. She doubted it was all right. More like blasphemy. You're a big fellow, Vivian? Her boyfriend praised her when it was over. Then the guy said that from now on they are in a relationship. But the girl still felt awkward being in her room with him. All the walls were hung with traces of her crime. And she began to think that it would be better to get him out of here as soon as possible. She was very embarrassed by all these pictures. What are we to do? The night is so long. I think you'd better go home, the girl insistently suggested. But the Archduke replied that he did not know what he was doing there alone, and he offered to continue what we started. After that, he immediately approached her very close with the clear intention of kissing her. The girl was in a panic. She didn't understand what he was talking about, what they were doing. She didn't remember anything at all. I'm almost naked. Who do you think took off my clothes? Vivian was very embarrassed. She did not believe that she'd undressed him and forgot everything. She certainly wouldn't have forgotten that. Oh, it seems I misunderstood. They didn't take it off me, but tore it to shreds. Mystery Guy said, pointing to his shirt, which was lying on the floor all torn. Vivian was horrified. She couldn't believe she could do such a thing. It was simply impossible. At that moment, the girl did not know where to put herself, and again began to tear her hair on her head. The guy reassured her and asked her not to worry about the torn things. What mattered to him was that she wanted it. He was so gentle and sweet that the girl felt elated with happiness. Although they were already a couple, she still did not understand the reason for his behavior. Moreover, she reminded me that the Archduke was not always so good. It used to look like an ice sculpture. Therefore, he was even given the nickname Ice Noble. Her age always really liked this type. The Archduke she knew rarely smiled and was completely unfriendly. Vivian, holding his hand, and not yet fully understood how to react to the fact that she became his girlfriend. In addition, she was tormented by doubts that it was all about the magic ball from Marina's bag. All these sudden outbursts of feelings could have occurred under the influence of the black ball. This thought haunted her. Archduke, how far will our relationship go? She decided to ask him a question that interested her very much. She really wanted to know what was meant by this relationship. Will they hold hands? Embrace? Kiss? The boy thought for a moment, pretending to seriously consider her question. He then approached her closely and replied that they were now in a relationship. Therefore, they will have everything. Hugs and kisses and everything. Such frankness again greatly embarrassed the girl. She was very surprised that he was willing to go that far, period. Especially since they were still officially free. But there are rumors about your wedding. Suddenly she said to him at the moment when he was ready to kiss her. She understood that since the Archduke was from the upper strata of society, a marriage of convenience should not cause him any questions. Aristocrats often marry not for love, for the well-being of their family. This applied to her parents, and Marina's parents, even her brother Cassim, including the Archduke. Since he is a famous nobleman, he will marry the princess. Since the mother of the Archduke was royal kings, he has the right to marry someone from the ruling dynasty. The girl was thinking about rather banal things. At this time, the Duke clung to her and caressed her. She felt that a little more and lose consciousness. Vivian, may I kiss you? First we'll kiss, then we'll move on to another. Suddenly, quite seriously, the guy said, peering into her eyes. The girl was in a semi-conscious state. She even began to feel that she had a nervous tic. At the same time, she did not stop thinking about what to do. Vivian even began to seriously think about hitting the guy so that he would come to his senses. And in the next moment, she did not even notice how her lips met in a kiss. The girl could not believe what was happening now. Right now, she was kissing the Archduke, and it was the most real kiss that a real couple has. Suddenly, the girl thought that someone might see them now and quickly deviated from the guy. Vivian, how long have you liked me? He suddenly asked, looking intently at the many portraits of himself on the wall. The girl thought. She understood that she could not tell him that she had been following him for 7 years. This will raise too many questions. Do you have strong feelings for me? The guy kept asking. He enjoyed watching her reaction when he asked questions like that. She didn't even know how to answer this question. He always looked like something unattainable to her. Initially, the Archduke was the first innocent love. And now she trembled, only briefly looking at him. He was always for her like a distant star that shone in the sky. At the same time, she understood that talking about a serious relationship in this situation did not make any sense. After all, In a year they will disperse, like ships at sea, as if nothing had happened. I hope you will be comfortable next to me, the boy said as he gently kissed her hand. And then he added that now you can tell her parents the whole truth, that they are officially a couple. Suddenly there was a noise outside. The girl immediately panicked and rushed to the window. Going to the window, she saw a group of people who, with torches, carefully examined the tracks leading to the house. Oh, here come the knights? What good fellows, almost found me. The guy who followed the girl went to the window was delighted. Vivian was hysterical. She wasn't in the mood for jokes right now. She had a huge problem. Besides, she had torn the Archduke's shirt, so that now he even had nothing to cover himself with. She rushed around the room. I don't know what to do. She urgently needed to find clothes to dress the guy. Suddenly she remembered that she could borrow clothes from her brother. Please wait here. I'll bring you a shirt. In a hurry, she said to the guy, and ran out of the room. The girl ran into the wardrobe, where she was going to find suitable clothes. Going through all the things in a hurry, she finally found what she needed. It looked very much like it was my father's shirt, but there was very little time to figure it out. She had to return urgently. The girl grabbed her shirt and quickly ran back. Walking down the corridor, she suddenly heard someone talking. People nearby said that a witness saw her kidnap the Archduke. Vivian rushed to her room even faster. She could not allow anyone to see the half-naked Archduke on her bed now. She stormed into her room all disheveled and out of breath. But to her great joy, she saw that there were no strangers in the room. The girl quickly gave the shirt, and the next moment there was a knock on the door. It was the butler who apologized, but asked her to leave immediately. The time has come, she thought. But now she was calmer. Since they are in a relationship with the Archduke, the situation will not seem so strange. She decided to explain to everyone that she did not kidnap him, but simply brought him to her room. Then she thought a little and realized that this is also not the best option. After all, they are not even engaged, and she has already brought him to her bedroom. After this, her reputation will go down the drain. The girl still thought that after the expiration of the contract, she would meet an ordinary person and finally get married. But if nothing is done now, then she will have to live the rest of her life with her parents. She thought about what she would do in this case. Vivian was very good at drawing and writing stories. In the future, she could become an author of fairy tales. Lady, this is very urgent. The butler continued to knock on the door, insisting that she come out. You are ready? The guy asked, smiling, and took her by the arm. He reassured her that she would soon get used to everything and everything would be fine. The girl smiled back, but she still felt like she was walking through a minefield. Vivian, she was sure that the butler would be shocked now. Due to the large number of duties, he earned indigestion and lost part of his hair. She really did not want to upset him, and mentally she already asked his forgiveness. After she opened the door, everything happened as she expected. The butler nearly fainted when he saw the Archduke in the young lady's room. The girl immediately began to explain that she was not a criminal at all. We had a secret date. Understand? She tried to speak naturally. The butler, with tears in his eyes, replied that he understood everything. But now, he did not know how to look into the eyes of the master and lady, her parents. He was simply heartbroken. Of course, the girl understood him perfectly. She had never interacted with the Archduke before, and then suddenly declares that they are now dating. Anyone would have suspected something was wrong. Butler, listen, we really have a relationship. I am not crazy. She still tried to convince him. In the end, the butler calmed down and said that he believed her. But now it was an incomprehensible day for him, those rumors about her wedding. He said that he sent her portraits a long time ago, and most importantly, she already liked one wealthy man. The girl was amazed when she heard about it. The next moment, she heard a loud crash and saw that the Archduke was holding a broken door handle in his hands. What a flimsy pen. Smiling, he said, not giving the appearance that he too was struck by what he heard from the butler. Vivian, at that moment, she remembered the words of her brother. He told her that all swordsmen are real monsters. Looking at the broken doorknob in the hands of the guy, now she realized that this was the complete truth. But now, for some reason, her relationship with the Archduke began to frighten her. It's good that we parted in a year, she told the boy with a smile. But in response, he did not just smile mysteriously, and said that he was not sure about this, and that he did not recall anything like that. His answer alarmed the girl very much. It's also a strange expression on his face. She began to worry again. Does not remember. Our versions must be the same. What if he pretends not to know anything about the length of the contract? There were more and more questions in her head. She understood that if he did not keep his promises, then she could have big problems. We're in a relationship, right? She asked the boy in a frightened voice. Vivian knew she had to convince him no matter the cost. She took his hand and repeated her question again. He left her no other choice, and she realized that it was time for her to use her signature facial expression when she needed something from her brother or parents. Please tell me, are we a couple? But in response, the guy looked at her and began to laugh loudly throughout the room. The girl did not expect such a reaction. She began to get very worried that he was just playing with her feelings and pretending all this time. But then, having laughed enough, the guy took her hand and smilingly confirmed that she was his girlfriend and they were a couple. Then he turned away again and began to laugh out loud. Vivian didn't understand anything, but she had the feeling that he was teasing her on purpose. The butler standing next to him certainly did not understand what they were talking about. The noise outside the window caught her attention again. It was necessary to go outside as quickly as possible, until they began to shout even louder outside the window. The girl noticed that the guy's knights looked very intimidating. Although her family also had very good warriors, she understood that it was necessary to urgently clarify everything until it came to a collision. She grabbed the guy by the hand and quickly pulled him out into the street. Going down the steep stairs, the guy friend stopped and said that she was more to him than just his girlfriend. He just wanted her to know about it. Vivian was very surprised by his confession, and even for a moment I wondered what he meant. Is he still hinting that I'm still his kidnapper? But now was not the time to think about it. There were only a few steps left before they went out into the street. When they went outside, they immediately ran into the girl's family and the Archduke's knights. The family was shocked by the sudden appearance of the Archduke along with his daughter. The knights also immediately began to resent that this girl had bewitched His Highness and committed treason. Vivian was in a panic. It all looked like a real disaster. We must explain everything to them. She turned to the boy in a frightened voice. He was absolutely calm and even seemed to be very amused by the whole situation. He grabbed her in his arms and said, smiling, that now no one would think that she could kidnap him. The girl at that moment had the feeling that now they were going to kidnap her, but she didn't resist. Now the most important thing was to resolve this whole situation. The knights were shocked when they saw their master with this girl in his arms. They immediately started questioning him. Mister, how did it happen? Who is this girl? She stole you with black magic? Vivian was very scared when she heard the question about black magic. In the entire empire, only a few magicians who received permission from the crown prince were allowed to use black sorcery. If it turns out that she is somehow involved in him, she and her family are immediately executed. The girl was immediately indignant at their suspicion. Do you think I could use black magic? I don't understand it at all. In addition, the knights of the family also laughed at this accusation. Although their young mistress is very sweet, but nature did not endow her with talents, they all knew about it very well. Well, the Archduke's knights had another important argument. They had the testimony of a witness they absolutely trusted, and this witness was sure that he saw how it all happened. I'll explain everything. Vivian is my girlfriend. She is the one I love. Suddenly, the Archduke himself intervened in the conversation, who saw that passions were heating up. Everyone around was shocked by such a frank statement. The girl's family and his knights froze in place in amazement. Only one knight drew his sword in an attempt to protect his master. Your Highness, you are out of your mind. I'm sure the witch has bewitched you. He tried to reason with the guy. The Archduke's face immediately changed. His gaze became very serious and frightening. You just called my girlfriend a witch? Are you ready to take responsibility for your words? The knight immediately realized that the Archduke was speaking quite seriously now. He dropped his sword and fell on his knees before it. His knights immediately started whispering among themselves. They could not believe that their master really had a lover. And anyway, it was amazing that he could have a relationship. What about Princess Eunice then? They thought, but then they quickly realized that it was certainly not for them to solve this problem. This is the princess of the southern country of Evron, the first heir to the throne. She herself proposed to the Archduke. "What are you thinking, Vivian?" Suddenly the guy asked the girl in his arms. He again became the same and smiled sweetly at her. She promised to tell him when they were alone. The situation continued to be uncertain. He was ready to arrange it right now, but he knew that he still needed to explain everything to her family and his knight. At such moments, he was very burdened by the title of Archduke. Instead of all this, he would very much like to be in the same bed with Vivian right now. When he looked at the girl's reaction, he laughed out loud. His knights, who were watching him from the side, were very surprised. It's the first time they've seen him do that, and he's been so gentle with someone. "Now let's discuss everything with your family." The guy proposed to the girl. It was a bit chilly outside, so he gently pulled her to him and hugged her tightly. The family and the girl was shocked by what they saw. But then the father came to his senses, apologized to the Archduke for not hospitality, and offered to enter the house and discuss everything in a cozy atmosphere. After a while, everyone was sitting by the fireplace and drinking tea. "Your Highness, are you going to sit like this?" I decided to ask the father of the guy, breaking the awkward silence. He was a little embarrassed that his adult daughter was sitting in the arms of the Archduke. The guy laughed in response and explained that he did not want to part with her even for a minute. Vivian was also very embarrassed by this. She believed that he was too diligently playing a loving guy. It was just a contract, and she understood that in the future he would still marry the princess. Also, his smile was very similar to his brother's when he always teased her. The girl noticed that the guy is very respectful of her father and constantly calls him by his title. It looked like my father really liked it. But the brother all this time looked very stupid. She really wanted to draw him at that moment, so that later she could mock him for the rest of her life. "So you are in a serious relationship with my daughter?" After his silence, your father nevertheless decided to ask you. The guy, without thinking, immediately answered that everything was so. Although only a week has passed, but his feelings for her were very sincere. Vivian listened to every word, but everything went unexpectedly very smoothly. But she was not sure that this was all normal, and she was a little uneasy. "Your Highness, may I ask a slightly rude question? What do you like about my sister so much?" Suddenly, the girl's brother asked the guy. She was furious. But it wasn't the question itself that pissed her off, but the sarcasm with which he did it. The Archduke thought very seriously. There was an awkward silence, and the girl began to worry. He thought for too long, although he could answer lightly and just come up with something plausible. "She's very cute. She has cute brown eyes, and she blushes funny when embarrassed." Suddenly the guy answered after a while, but he was very surprised that the older brother did not consider his sister charming. "Well, I haven't lost my mind yet. That is, my sister is so beautiful that I'm about to go crazy." The meeting ended and the guy and the girl went out into the garden. He was in a good mood and told her that he had a great time today. "Tomorrow morning I will send you a letter and a gift." Smiling, he said, and seeing her misunderstanding, he explained that this is the basis of the relationship. Vivian's head was spinning from it all. She didn't understand what he was talking about. She had no idea how to behave because it was her first relationship. The girl immediately decided that it would be necessary to consult Marina about this, but it was very strange that it is still not there. Then the guy gently kissed her goodbye and wished good night. The girl returned to her room and gave vent to all emotions. The room still smelled like a guy. She still could not believe that all this was true, and she was meeting with the Archduke. A little bit later, "You're an idiot. How could you think of calling the lady a witch? If we strike again 100, then His Highness may take pity on you." At this time, the guy was sitting with a glass of wine and giving orders to the butler. He'd asked to send his girlfriend fresh yellow flowers, which will be very in harmony with her hair. The butler silently listened to all these orders and remained silent. It was very unlike his master. The butler immediately let his parents know that something was definitely happening to him. He said the guy was behaving strangely. He constantly chooses the best gifts for a girl and really wants to please her. In addition, now he always thanked him for his help. It was very unusual. It seems his master has matured. The guy was alone in his office. He took out a key from the box and opened his desk with it, in which novels were kept from the author of The Rabbit Vivi. The Archduke took one of the books and began to read, although his thoughts were somewhere far away. He dreamed of the day when he could read this to Vivian. He even mentally began to imagine what her reaction would be. Yes, it is. He's been waiting for this for a very long time, and I felt his heart about to jump out of my chest. Before meeting Vivian, it was so insensitive that he even doubted its presence. Long before all this, about 5 years ago, the girls sat and cheerfully discussed the new novels of Vivi the Rabbit. They really enjoyed counting these books, so they didn't miss a single part and always tried to get them as soon as possible. Suddenly a strong wind came up and one of the books flew off the table. The guy picked it up from the ground and curiously began to read on a random page. The girls were delighted that the handsome Archduke himself approached them. "The heir to a great empire is my boyfriend. Is this some kind of romance?" he asked without looking up from his reading. The guy stood near their table and read aloud. "I have no one but you, and you are the only person I love," Archduke Lennox said in his beautiful voice. The guy read it and smiling asked the girls to explain to him what it is, showing the book in his hands. It was a nonsensical love story in which he was the main character. He couldn't believe that someone imagined him that way. The guy didn't understand, as if he had a lot of free time for such conversations, which were described in this book. Guy once asked the knight with whom he trained about his personal qualities, but he only told him that the Archduke was by far the strongest swordsman. The guy was very surprised. Even the knight who admired him the most didn't say anything like that, while the author wrote a whole bunch of text. The butler told the guy that he was invited next week to an official dinner at the Marquis Maurice, and tomorrow was a dance evening. But the guy was sitting at that time thinking about the novel. He even thought that it was worth calling an actor who could read these knave lines with expression. He then dropped the idea as he knew he would feel too embarrassed. He firmly decided that it was imperative to find out who Vivi the Rabbit was, even though he had no idea what he would do next after he found her. The guy noticed that the handwriting clearly did not belong to a commoner. The handwriting was similar to that of aristocratic girls. In addition, it was clear from everything that this person was very familiar with high society and its culture. She knows the rules of greeting and even the seating rules. The guy at the dance party thought about all this. "Hello, Your Highness." He was greeted by an unfamiliar girl. He did not know her, but he remembered that she always greeted him and immediately quickly ran away. So she did this time. But the guy, as always, did not pay any attention to this. He was thinking about Vivi the Rabbit. After all the thought, the guy was sure that the author of the books was a representative of a noble family. Then he suddenly realized that she might be here. Perhaps this is the owner of that strange look that he often feels on himself. This look did not carry hatred in itself, but it strained and irritated him very much. One morning, he mounted a horse and explained to the butler that he needed to investigate something on his own. So he asked to keep it a secret, not to tell the servants. The guy went in search of a man who wrote a love story with his participation. Listening to the conversations of passers-by in the city, he had a small lead. From her, he understood that she was using the bookworm store as an intermediary. This store looked very small, and it seemed that it would be difficult for even two to fit in it. In addition, this store also housed a printing house, but it still didn't look like a quality book could be made in this place. I couldn't bring myself to call this place a bookstore, but the guy understood that if he was lucky, he would be able to meet Vivi the Rabbit here. Suddenly, a very young beautiful girl entered the store. She walked past a guy who pretended to be very interested in reading. Although at that moment, he did not take his eyes off her and carefully listened to her conversation with the owner of the store. The hostess was very glad to see the girl. She was glad that she was finally here. In addition, she told the girl that a lot of people ask about the new work of Vivi the Rabbit. The hostess really wanted to contact her, but did not know how to do it. "This is good. I just bought a new part," the young girl replied with a smile. "She asked me to have it printed and bound." The boy heard every word they said. After he realized that this girl brought a new novel, he began to examine her closely. She had well-groomed hair and skin, neat nails with a good manicure. The dress is simple but stylish enough. He had no doubt that she was an aristocrat. But at the same time, he did not understand how a girl could know on a family walk unaccompanied. He watched her closely and saw how friendly she was. She didn't seem to be afraid of anything. While the guy was watching her from afar, he was approached by a worker who offered to buy a figurine of a small rabbit. And at that moment, the guy suddenly realized that he had already seen this face somewhere. In a moment, he remembered her. It was the daughter of the Earl of Lewis named Vivian Lewis. The guy held a small rabbit in his hands and rejoiced at his luck. She chose such an obvious pseudonym for herself. Smiling, he said to himself, it was too easy. After some time, the guy arrived at the reception to the Marquise. All the girls around him were whispering behind his back how good the first heir of the Southern Kingdom was. But he paid no attention to it. He watched from afar as his brother once again saved Vivian from falling. At the last reception, she was also caught 3 or 4 times. The Archduke was very surprised at his awkwardness and did not understand how one could fall so often. He trembled and worried at every such occasion. But then he made up his mind that Vivian's fall had nothing to do with him. Although her romance about their relationship was pretty sweet on the surface, it still had some questions about the plot. The lovers in these books were like kindergarten graduates. The guys really wanted to look into her head and understand her thoughts. Suddenly, the Marquise personally approached the guy and started small talk. The guy tried not to show that she was not at all interesting to him and reluctantly answered from time to time. Although at that time he himself was closely watching how Vivian was collecting food in a small package, the guy did not understand why she was doing this. He had never heard Earl Lewis abuse and starve his children. The girl took a full bag of food and quickly ran away somewhere. Would you like to dance with my daughter? Suddenly the guy heard a question from the Marquise. He has long dropped out of this conversation and even forgot about her presence. I'm sorry, but I have to leave immediately. The guy answered quickly and followed Vivian in a hurry. He was very interested in where she had run away so quickly. She constantly slipped and fell, and now she rushed off headlong. After some time, he followed her to the imperial forest. It was very dangerous. The guards could see her at any moment. The guy knew that he would have to go after her. Moreover, there were a lot of wild animals here. Rabbit. I brought food, the girl said and began to take food out of the bag in front of the little rabbit. After some time, the girl was covered in rabbits who fawned over her. The guy was watching this cute picture when suddenly he heard something. As he expected, they were patrolmen. There was no time for reflection. He quickly jumped out of the bushes and grabbed the girl and hid her from the patrolman in a secluded place. Do you understand that you have penetrated the land of the emperor? He asked the girl when the threat had passed. Vivian looked at him with her huge eyes in fear, unable to say a word. Then for the first time he saw a man whose eyes radiated, I like you. And the one to whom all these feelings were directed is he. He told her it was time to return to the ballroom. There was some kind of awkwardness between them, which they both felt at the same time. Why is my heart beating so fast? Get it together, Lennox. She's still a child. The guy thought at that moment. They were almost back when suddenly the girl asked, Archduke, do you remember me? The guy replied that of course he remembers the young Miss Lewis, who always says hello and immediately runs away. Very sweet and friendly. That's how I remember you. The girl immediately blushed after his words and even squealed with joy. Thanks for helping me. Have a good evening, she said and ran away. The boy walked behind her, tightly clenching his fists. He looked after the fleeing girl and thought only that in 5 years she would be 21 years old. 5 years. Time passed year after year. The Archduke was constantly next to Vivian, not showing her eyes. He just watched her from afar. Is there no official reception for the Earl of Lewis? Frustrated, the guy asked his butler. He couldn't find a way to meet the girl. He did not want to send a letter with a request. It would be too obvious. The guy really missed Vivian. All the last 5 years he thought only about her. One day he sat in the dead of night and admired the starry sky, thinking about the girl. Suddenly he heard a strange rustle and saw how barefoot Vivian was walking through the bushes. It was so unexpected that he was even a little confused. Moreover, he did not understand how she managed to get through security in such a form. The guy quickly took off his jacket and threw it over the girl. Every time the heir arrives at the mansion, the guard informs the butler about it, and he is already the owner. But no one informed him of Vivian's arrival. The girl looked very strange. She was silent and seemed to be looking through him. When he gazed into her eyes, He immediately knew what was going on. It was black magic. The girl mumbled something under her breath, but the guy did not understand anything and continued to think. He knew that Vivian had absolutely no magic skills, so he definitely wouldn't be able to use it. It followed that someone else had placed the spell on her. This frightened him very much. He had no idea what kind of bastard could use black magic on his dear Vivian. He was even more worried that they used a spell that was aimed at her mind. It could have had a very negative effect on her. Lennox tried to calm himself. First of all, he needed to figure out what kind of magic it was. He stared into her eyes and suddenly understood everything. It was a magic called Cursed Charm. This magic allows you to summon an evil spirit that attacks a specific target. It was definitely Crown Prince Arthur Asmode who did it. Suddenly a thought flashed through his mind. The boy became suspicious of the Crown Prince, who did not have the courage to challenge him openly. Therefore, the prince always tried to spoil him on the sly. "Archduke, I really like you," suddenly the girl said and rushed to the guy with hugs. Bitter tears rolled from her eyes. She told him that she really did not want to get married, and she admitted that she would love only him all her life. The guy smiled sweetly and offered in this case to leave everything as it is. But the girl suddenly got very angry and started yelling at him that she could not live her whole life alone, just looking at him from afar. She needs to get married too. "Even if you don't want to?" the surprised guy asked. He did not expect that he would now discuss this topic with her. "Whether I want it or not, I have to do it." "Archduke, you fool," the girl answered him with irritation. She grabbed him by the shirt and started shaking the guy, continuing to call him a fool. At first, this really surprised the guy. Then he remembered that she was under the influence of a cursed charm. This calmed him down a bit, and now her behavior, even a little, started to make him laugh. "Are you laughing? Did I say something funny?" The girl was indignant at his smile. The guy realized at that moment that she herself is harmless and cannot harm others. Therefore darkness cannot penetrate it. "How annoying you are, Archduke. Well, you're so beautiful that even pissed me off," she kept yelling at Vivian's boyfriend. She admitted that she wants to be the only one who looks at this beauty, but he was too popular. "Then you can kidnap me, lock me up and look at me, can't you?" Smiling jokingly offered her a guy. The girl suddenly stopped screaming and thought. She was very surprised by this proposal and even asked him again. But Lennox told her that she could do whatever she wanted. "Then can I tie you up?" the girl asked, and without waiting for an answer she quickly took out a rope from somewhere. The Archduke was very surprised by her inclinations, but allowed himself to be tied up. Moreover, he saw that he could easily break this rope. Vivian led the bound guy right through the park. "We came. From here we will go by carriage." The guy was very surprised. He knew that there should be security here and did not understand where she had gone. And suddenly he saw the knights, who leaned on each other while sitting and snoring. The guy understood. The girl could not turn them off with a stick or fists. He examined them carefully, but they did not react in any way. Then the girl confessed that she had given them candy. The guy at first began to think about how she managed to feed them with these sweets, but then he decided not to bother himself with this yet. "Miss, you're back?" the coachman asked the girl joyfully. Then he was speechless when he saw the bound Archduke. "He's coming to visit us." With a smile on her face, the girl said to the coachman, who could not even move. Only the boy's cry to hurry up brought him out of his stupor. The coachman, although he did not understand anything, decided not to argue. The next moment, when they were already in the carriage, the knights woke up and rushed to their master. They saw his tied hands and were ready for anything. But to their surprise, the Archduke smiled sweetly and said that he was being kidnapped. Then he changed his face and in a completely serious tone ordered them not to follow the carriage. The knights were shocked. They ran for a long time after the rapidly departing carriage and did not understand what was happening. They were definitely not prepared for this. After some time, they finally arrived at Vivian's father's house. The girl was leading a bound guy and was very happy that he was finally only hers. Then they entered her room. The guy froze in amazement. The whole room of the girl was in his portraits. She covered the entire room with them. There was even a full-length pillow that she slept with every day. "Damn, this is too much," thought the guy and quickly freed himself from the ropes. Then suddenly he grabbed her in his arms and threw her on the bed. Vivian, I don't even know what I'll do if things continue like this, the guy said, gently hugging her. The girl suddenly jumped up and said that she would help him now. Then she took the rope again, tied his hands and tied him to the bed. Now you can't do anything. Rejoicing like a child, she laughed. The archduke was so beautiful in her bed that she really wanted to draw it. In the novel that I took from Marina, how was it there? Muttering to herself, Vivian crawled closer to the guy and began to examine his shirt. The next moment, she seemed to go crazy and in one movement tore off the shirt from the bound guy. The guy was in shock. He was shaking all over. Yes, what kind of Roman is this? The girl sat next to him and examined his half-naked body. If you are so interested, then you can touch it, Lennox offered her in a languid voice. The girl awkwardly touched the guy with apprehension. He was so hard that she could not stop and continue to touch him. Such pumped-up muscles. She admired his beautiful body. The girl wanted to remember it as best as possible in order to take into account all the details when she would draw it. Then the girl saddled the guy and began to examine his long beautiful eyelashes. She couldn't stop looking at them. Can I kiss you? Vivian suddenly asked. The guy was taken aback by this question, but he didn't even have time to answer her when all of a sudden she dug into his lips with all her might. Vivian, I'm afraid to upset you, but it was not a kiss. You terrible pain, he told her. His whole face ached with pain, as after a missed blow in a duel. The girl was very surprised that he did not like it and asked to tell how it was necessary. Tenderer, and try to take a bite, the guy told her. Vivian was very scared. She didn't want to bite so as not to hurt him. But the guy replied that what she had just tried to do before was much more painful. Vivian gently approached his face and then kissed him gently. After a long kiss, the guy suddenly said, "Here you go, now everything is correct." This very embarrassed the girl and her face immediately turned very red with shame. Lennox immediately laughed out loud at her reaction. She was very sweet when she was so shy. Vivian, marry me, suddenly a guy suggested, but the girl immediately changed her face and frowned very much. She did not understand how she could marry the Archduke. Lennox also realized his mistake. He remembered that she was under the influence of magic and really wanted her to wake up now. He really wanted to see her real at this moment, and not the image that magic inspired. After all, he had been waiting for this for 5 years. He knew perfectly well the difference in their position. In addition, the guy did not want to give up the reason for the rumors. Like a girl that the Archduke would play with and throw away like an unnecessary toy. Dad won't agree to that. The girl answered him with sadness in her voice. She then explained that he was in too high a position. Only by marrying someone of your level can you live happily. This was her father's opinion, but she immediately admitted that she did not share it. Can you be happy if you marry another person? Suddenly the guy asked and immediately regretted it. There were tears in her eyes again, and then she got angry and started yelling at him again. Glenn Lennox, you're a fool. She then started beating him and screaming that she hated him. The guy laughed in response and said that he did not hurt at all. It was like a kick from a rabbit's paw to him. His taunts angered the girl even more. I can't stand you. She continued to beat him. But I love you. Despite all her beatings, the guy suddenly confessed. It was at that moment that it seemed to him that this feeling no longer fits the definition of I like you. I love you, Vivian, the guy repeated again. This time, the girl suddenly calmed down and looked at him intently. Then her eyes widened in amazement and her whole body shook. Then she lost consciousness and fell on the guy. It seems the magic is over.